Hey guys, welcome back to Roll Radio. I'm here with a very special guest, manager, record label, and agency owner, Max Bernstein.
Bradley, my man, what's up?
Thanks so much for stopping by. For those that don't know, actually, before we get into anything, I just want to talk about your background in particular. I don't think I know this personally, where you grew up, where you came from, and we'll go from there.
Grew up in Westchester County, just outside New York City. Went to school at Tufts University, graduated 2003. Basically, which meant I went to school in 1999 when the stock market was approaching a bubble, and then I left school in 2003 when had just finished crashing. So my passion going in was to be this like Wall Street tycoon because everyone was doing it. And then throughout the 4 years that I was there, the world changed, but I kind of kept that as like my ideal and my goal. And I went into Wall Street and spent 10 years working on the buy side in financial services. And about 7 years into that, I realized this wasn't for me, not because I hated it, but because it just, didn't fulfill me the way that I needed. And I went and searched for some other stuff. And through a couple more things, I don't know how deep you want me to go, but I landed on where I'm at now.
Nice. Let's just jump from Wall Street to music. For those that don't know, Max has a lot of incredible views on the future of music and how applications can intersect with artists and just create new opportunities. I found that fascinating. Before we get into any of that, how did you get into, music first? Was it managing artists? Was it, starting a label? Was it running an agency?
So the first thing I did when I left Wall Street was turn a music blog into a business. And the first thing was to put out a record with an artist that we liked a lot. So we hired an attorney, signed them to a deal, and then released the record. And that went actually pretty well. And then I started gaining all this awareness about how things were working, making relationships, and then thought that I kind of needed to continue on and keep scaling. The next thing was live events. So, a 300-person club night in Brooklyn then became a 300-person club night in San Francisco, then a 5,000-person music festival on Governor's Island, and then a 4-day, 90-band, alternate stages activation at South by Southwest that we did in 2014, 15, and 16. So I would say that out of all those things and, managing a couple artists in between and doing some publicity stuff, that live events was really the first foray after Wall Street. But all the while, I'm like, man, this live events thing is not really what I want to be doing either. Like being responsible for the physical presence of people is not the future for me. Maybe that was because I was already 32 and I had just had a kid. By that time, I was 32 and I got into it, and then 2-3 years into it, I had a kid. And I'm like, I just want to watch my kid grow up, not so much like be, in all these different places. So I was looking for like a digital way to solve a problem in the music business. And the first thing that I came up with was to create a Spotify playlist servicing business. And I was going to be friends with the top 20 playlisters on Spotify who were independent. And then on the other side, I'd have the music industry relationships. And when the new music came out, I'd be able to go to them and say, hey, you need to be on top of this, whatever, stand in between, service them for a fee, and that would be the business. Tried really hard to get that off the ground, but it just wouldn't, because in 2014, Spotify was really young. There was like 1 million paid subscribers in the US. They weren't giving tools to anybody to grow a big playlist. So I had to go back and produce my live events. I had the good fortune to produce the 6-year anniversary party for VaynerMedia.
Okay.
Where they wanted us to produce a music festival on the Williamsburg waterfront for like 600 employees. So that led to being in the proximity of Gary Vee in 2015 for like several months leading up. And he, you know, who I was a fan of already, he wouldn't stop talking about Musically, the app. And here I am, I'm like, I'm trying to solve a problem in the music business. And here's a guy who's, you know, known for solving problems, known for knowing what's next, and he won't shut up about Musically. I better go figure this out. But I'm 33 at the time or whatever, 34. And I just like fought it and fought it and fought it all throughout 2015. I was like hoping it was going to go away. But then 10 million installs became 20, became 30, became 40. And by the, you know, December, this time, literally 5 years ago, I was like, all right, after the holidays, I'm going to dive into this thing and force myself to figure it out. And I did. And I struggled. But then after this big event that I had on my live events business in March, I had this light bulb moment where I was like, holy smokes, these 15-year-old girls are the playlisters that I wanted to build that agency around.
Wow.
They're just not, they don't actually have playlists on Spotify, but they have like insane reach and distribution on Musically. And they were like making their lip syncs to Cheap Sia, Cheap Thrills, and Jason Derulo songs, and Drake One Dance was big. And they were getting like 600,000 engagements per post that you could see, let alone like the numbers of views that you couldn't see at the time. So I hired a team in the Philippines to scrape the app of all the data and deliver me the social graphs of everybody above 100,000 followers. They call them fans. And then I went hand to hand and I was like, look, if I, you know, brought you new music to engage with as part of campaigns, would you be interested? But the resounding response was yes. And then I went to the music industry relationships, which were largely agents and managers at the time, because remember, I was just meeting people by promoting events. And they were like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, but it sounds like you do. So let's do it. So then I branded it, the company that it is today, Muser. Ran my first campaign in May 2016. Musically blew up, became TikTok, all the while through some thought leadership blogging that I had been doing at the behest or at the recommendation of Gary Vee. I became, you know, well revered within the marketing meetings in the digital, you know, marketing side of the business as like the guy who can help you understand this, the guy who can help lead you and craft the marketing campaign for you. And as we sit here today, it's like very much so the dominant marketing strategy in the business, particularly during quarantine times, is to, you know, have a TikTok marketing plan and be able to execute it. And our services have been in, you know, have never been in higher demand as a result of that. And largely all the, you know, that's how I was led to you, you know, a couple of years ago when we became friends.
Amazing. Yeah, you really crushed the thought leadership thing. We've seen you on CNBC. We've seen you quoted sort of everywhere since then, especially with the growth of Old Town Road and many sort of TikTok native songs.
Yep.
Let's get into it. I really want to talk about just the birth of TikTok as a concept. You write a lot about this for folks that aren't familiar. I guess just generally diving in, how has it impacted, you know, music consumption on the internet? Like what is TikTok really? What has it done?
So TikTok was Musically. Musically was an app that launched in 2014 and became popular in 2015. And back then, if you were a kid who was using Musically, you were between the ages of 8 and 12. And if you were 8 and 12 in 2015, you didn't have Spotify. Like only us, you know, hipsters living in Brooklyn really had Spotify. So like, if you were having success on Musically as a song, let's just call it, whether it's Drake or whether it's independent, something that no one's ever heard of, you were seeing consumption lift like on YouTube. Because these folks, you know, were not really going to like Spotify and saying, I want to listen to the whole song. They were saying, you know, YouTube, you know, typing in the lyrics, I need a one dance, right? And they say, oh, it's this Drake song. Awesome. It's my new favorite thing. And you start to see in the comments, Musically brought me here, or they would even say the name of the creator, Jacob Sartorius brought me, you know, whatever, and it became this community in the comments underneath the Drake video that most of the business didn't understand. So as the folks in the business that were brave said, oh, I don't care. I mean, look, we want to affect consumption at Spotify and Apple, you know, and iTunes, but if it's happening anywhere, we'll take it. And those people are now being rewarded because the 8-year-olds are now, you know, 13, and the 12-year-olds are now 17, and they all have Spotify because Spotify growth, or just forget Spotify, just call it streaming. You know, what is there? 350 million people in the world who now pay for streaming music accounts. That was obviously not the case 5 years ago, but now that it is, if you have a hit on TikTok, right, which I'm using synonymous with Musically because it's essentially the continuation, you know, you're now streaming millions of times a day, maybe, let alone, you know, a week, a month. And that's obviously real money, it's real interest, it's real clout, it's real power. And for those of them, you know, artists who are independent, means record deals and opportunities and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, it's incredible. I remember hearing about TikTok back in the day. It really became something to kind of laugh at. And now it's literally the platform to sort of break music. I know a lot of your day to day now is really, you know, analyzing TikTok, researching songs that could potentially be hits through, you know, the analytics there. What are you learning by doing this, and what can you share?
Love that question. I've thought this since the day I started, or the day I opened up Musically. It's like I could go to a 3-day long, you know, conference about music and not learn as much as if I just open the freaking app for like 30 minutes and just sit there and look at my feed, but also just dive into like random creators' accounts and read the comments and listen to what people are saying and understand the gossip. And like, you can learn so much just by looking at it. I mean, if you're a consumer products business and you just want to know like what Gen Z looks like beyond like when you drop your kid off at school and you see the faces of the people who they interact with, go to music, go to TikTok and just like become part of that ecosystem on a periodic basis, and you will learn so much because everyone's laying it all out there for you. So one thing I know for absolute certainty is that it moves incredibly fast. A trend today is not a trend next month. And if you're, you know, take a break or, you know, you step away from it, you got to relearn it all again when you come back. And as a result of building a business around this ecosystem or this community, we've never taken a break. So we've like seen the evolution from the very beginning, you know, before Baby Ariel blew up, before Jacob Sartorius, before Kristen Hansford, Lauren Gray, all these people, and then watch them grow, and then watch the, you know, phase 2 and the phase 3 and the phase 4, and then what happens to them when the new crop comes in, and then when it gets rebranded. So it's, you know, unless you want me to get specific, like that's the main takeaway, is that, you know, if I were to tell you what's popping now, it doesn't matter. By the time you air this, it's not popping anymore.
It's crazy. So have you found any like clear formula for success that like an artist or producer can sort of learn from? Like what makes something successful on TikTok?
So it starts with the sound, because people think TikTok is a video platform. And if you hear about it written in the press and all that sorts of stuff, you might think so. You might be like, oh, okay, this says fastest growing, you know, video platform, blah, blah, blah. It's not. It's not. Video is just a means to convey or express yourself with audio. So the first thing you have to do is, if you're trying to market a song, for instance, is listen to the whole thing and listen to it a lot. And based on what you know to exist on the platform regarding trends, you know, visual trends, effects that are being used, filters, lenses, all these things, trend styles, what part of the song should we be supplanting into the app as an original sound or as an official audio, and then to give the creators enough to create on and enough to express themselves with. And once you have that, then you have to marry that with a visual routine that you think might work. This could be specific, like, oh, it's a dance, but everyone knows TikToks for dances. Or it can be like more like an aesthetic or an ethos, like, oh, this should be like a e-girl and e-boy type thing, or this should be a, visually aesthetic type, trend or something like that. And then you have to have the relationships with the creators who have the distribution and be able to go to them with something that they want and service and pitch them like anyone else. So that's like ultimately the formula. That's not going to get anybody far enough to have a necessarily hit record. They need to like certainly study and learn a bit more about that. But then there's luck is a big ingredient too, and I won't lie about that. I mean, like, you have the best laid plans, you put them in motion, and what you really need is for like one of those videos from a relatively medium to small size creator do extremely well. It needs to connect with the algorithm, which in this case they're calling the For You page, really well, because what that does is it signals to the rest of the community that if they post something like it to that sound, it has the opportunity and propensity to outperform as well. Because if it outperforms, let's say you're used to getting 10,000 views per video, you're just some kid, sitting around. If you can get a video to do 100,000 or God forbid, 1 million views, your follower number is going to grow from, 1,000 to 10,000. And if you do it again next week, 10,000 to 100,000. You do it again next week, 100,000 to 500, and then to 1 million. And all of a sudden you're an influencer and you're famous. And you go to school and you get pat on the back and everyone thinks you're, this or that. And it's no different than when you and I went to high school, when all we wanted to do was score the winning touchdown, get an A on our test, date the cheerleader, whatever it may be for you, because that made you popular. And famous is the new popular only because the enrollment at this particular school is hundreds of millions of people, and they have to just like use a different word for it. So in a world where everyone wants to become famous, if you can create and craft a campaign that gives them the tools to leverage your product, in this case it's a song, to become famous and fulfill their dream, then you win.
Amazing. What a brilliant analogy of enrolling in a school with 100 million people. I like that. Yeah, I forget if this was before Old Town Road or after, but you told me a story of chasing down some kid who was so influential that he was doing dances for songs that I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, were not on the Billboard 100. And after he sort of, did the song or sort of made it dance, it started cracking charts. Just as a case study, can you tell me a little bit more about those stories or those type of TikTok influencers and like the impact they could have on, how we identify music in like a Billboard or Spotify list?
Absolutely. So remember what I said, right? Everyone wants to become famous. And making, your own version of a existing trend is one way, right? Someone else created the trend, blah, blah, blah. If I hop on it and my post does well, everyone's going to see me and I'm going to get followers and I'm going to become famous. Another way to do it is to create the trends. And early on, the people that really understood that tried very hard to make those happen. So they're sitting there every day listening for music in their real life and thinking to themselves, oh, well, how do I bring this to TikTok in a way that I think is going to, first my fans are going to like, and then next, potentially it could blow up and become a trend. And the two examples are the one that I think you're talking about were on my podcast. And that was with Michael Pelchat, who goes by Nice Michael, who's the creator of the Old Town Road, kind of like cowboy wardrobe transformation trend that popped off in February 2019, 18. whatever that is, 19. And then Ajani and Devontae Huff, who created Blanco Brown, the Get Up dance. And in both those situations, they heard the sounds off platform. I think in the case of Blanco Brown, the Get Up, they heard it on Facebook. And in the case of Old Town Road, he heard it on Twitter. And they were just like, because of this like mindset that they're in, I need to blow something up on TikTok so that I can fulfill my dream of becoming famous. They were like, boom. And in both those interviews, which you can go listen to on my site, they say they ripped the song down, and then in Johnny and Devontae's case, they went to the lake and they practiced their dance moves on it for a day, and then they filmed it. And in Michael's case, he went to his house and DM'd Lil Nas X, who had like 3,000 followers at the time, and was like, "Dude, I'm gonna bring this to TikTok. Is that okay?" And he did this twirl around thing where he jumped and it turned into a cowboy, and then that was like the first major market trend on TikTok.
Absolutely insane. Yeah, it's historic. We talk about this a bit behind the scenes, but I'm just curious, in your view, are there ways you think the TikTok community and blockchain can just intersect together? Are there problems blockchain?
Diving right into it, going from the easy softballs to the difficult questions. Okay. Yes. So one sticking point amongst creators on TikTok is accreditation for starting the trend. In the case of Nice Michael, he wasn't widely recognized besides a couple of articles early, from Billboard and stuff that kind of got drowned out. He wasn't all that widely recognized for starting the trend. And in the case of Ajani and Devontae, they did not get credit at first, because what happened was a creator out of the UK, whose name is escaping me, did their dance, but he did it in a way that blew up 100 times bigger than any of their videos, even though they had got the ball rolling and there was already some groundswell, and everybody thought that he had made it, to the point where like he had to like publicly come out and say he didn't, because he felt bad. And then there's countless, the most popular example of this is the Renegade dance, which was very popularly and commonly attributed to Charli D'Amelio, but really was this wonderful, talented woman named Jalila from Atlanta who made it, and posted it to a different app or community that kind of trickled into her radar. And then she posted it, not trying to pretend it was hers, but because she became so big so quick at that time, everybody else thought it was hers. And then she literally got called out in the New York Times for like stealing this girl's thing. And she felt terrible. 15-year-old girl was like, I didn't mean to do this. And then she started using other people's dances and fully crediting them. And if you go to her page right now and scroll through, you'll see she credits everybody, whether they're big or small. And that is like the Band-Aid or the quick fix for being able to attribute who made these dances. But when you talk about blockchain and its ability to inscribe you in a way that like can't be undone, then I'm thinking about how does that work for blockchain? You mentioned to me something the other day, like artwork is being listed on the blockchain so that somebody can own a piece of digital art in that way. And I thought to myself, well, what if, so-and-so creator can go list their dance on blockchain and then therefore forever be protected. What you also need to know, between the time that Devontae, Ajani, and Michael all did their thing to now, the marketplace for creating trends is like 1,000 times bigger. So at that time, they were early. They were trying to create trends when everyone else was just trying to follow trends, because they were ahead of their times. Now everybody understands the power of being the next to create a trend, whether it's Beyonce, Megan Thee Stallion, Savage, or whatever, is how fame can come to you almost like overnight. So if you did that, if somebody figured that out, there would be hundreds, thousands, I don't know, every day, people registering, people somehow figuring out to get their like steps or they're otherwise trend, tagged or inscribed in the blockchain.
It's a brilliant concept. I was really, really excited about the premise of that coming to life and the problems it solved.
You're going to be the one to do it.
Well, yeah, or we may know the folks who may do it, but definitely
Nice.
startup for the listeners there. I want to get into Crowned, what it is, why it started. So you have a joint venture record label with 300 Entertainment called Crowned. For those that are listening that just may have not heard that term, I like unpacking stuff. Like, what is a joint venture first, and then explain why you started Crowned.
A joint venture is a partnership that has, an unlimitless amount of deal terms and points. So they're all different. So there's no like, this is what a joint venture is necessarily. But if I have something and I'm a small independent solo practitioner, if I have something that a large company wants, there's a couple different ways to get it. They can buy it from you. They can hire you as an employee, or they can make a company with you. And depending on the person you're talking to, building the company together might be the best way to do it. And that was the case for me because I want to be an owner, and that's, I'm willing to take the risk of building and owning in exchange for fulfilling my dreams and goals. So they sensed that, and they very, quickly, this is now 300 Entertainment. They were quickly like, gravitated towards the idea that started with me, and my mentor at the time was a gentleman in the business a couple decades longer than me, and he said we should start this label because back in 2017 when we approached 300 with the concept, very few people were mining musically for talent and opportunity. And here I was spending all day on it as a result of having built a business around that community. And I just said to them basically like, well, let's make this venture and you can empower me to go find opportunities that you're definitely not already seeing, because their A&Rs were at the clubs at night, or they were like hanging out in Atlanta and meeting like the up and coming hip hop artists, or flying to New Zealand and meeting like, the rock bands that are playing. So like, the answer was immediately yes. Took us, several months to negotiate, and then we were off. And then we started signing artists and finding our way. And here we are. We have 6 now. Awesome. 3 years later.
Yeah. You want to let us know who the 6 are? Is that not public information?
No, it's perfectly public. The website's crownedrecords.com. The artists are ILY Tommy, formerly known as Heroin Father. He's got this very unique brand of romantic rap. Savage Gasp, who became, who's been grinding and building, steadily over the last 3 to 4 years, but you might have heard of him this summer in collaboration with another artist named Corpse. They had a song called E-Girls Are Ruining My Life. That went pretty crazy and continues to. And for him, I'm really happy because, he had one of those moments 2 years ago with his own song called Pumpkin Scream in Dead of Night. Then he had one along with ILY Tommy, formerly known as Heroin Father, with a song called Tunnel of Love. And now he's got his 3rd one. So it's almost undeniable, right? Like you can say, oh, like this artist is a flash in the pan. He had, an internet, viral song or something, but no, he's going on number 3, and he's even got some other ones that maybe not at that level are still doing really well on the internet. So we're excited for him. Sophie Marie B is a singer-songwriter out of San Diego who had a very interesting thing happen to one of her songs. This is actually, quite topical, but like it was stolen from her. She put it out on her Instagram, like with 1,000 people, following her, and someone stole it and put it on the internet and claimed it was their own, and it blew up. And then she went on vacation, and her friends were like, "Dude, your song's hit big." Anyway, it all worked out, and now she's got herself a career, and it's really wonderful to be working with her. Lil Charlie manufactured a trend for himself last summer on TikTok, which I was so impressed by. Talking to him, he was 17 years old, 16 years old at the time, and I'm like, man, like you have a lot that I can learn from. Boom, started working with him. And then Sabi Sousa, our most recent signing, Toronto-based pop artist, but it's more like lo-fi. She calls it floss pop. And also had a major moment on TikTok this year with a song of hers. And then there's a sixth artist, which is called XIX, which is in this like hyper pop space, but there are like also a lot more than that. They come from like a metal background. So now if you imagine like metal music meets internet hyperpop music, it's this unique brand that I don't think anyone else is doing these days. Truth be told, those are actually they're not technically on Crowned, that band, because we came in as their managers and signed them to a different label once the deal got kind of away from us. But I can, consider them part of that family as well.
Incredible. And you would say the majority of these folks you found through sort of TikTok analytics?
Oh yeah, every single one. And the challenge now is that the rest of the industry is doing that at a way higher level than me. Like, you're a major label, you've got technology beyond, my resources to find this stuff so early on TikTok that the playing field is not only level, but it's even skewed away from me. So I have to be a lot sharper, and I have to be a lot, I've got to take the Moneyball approach, if you know what I mean. And that's fine. I like that.
Nice, cool. And 300's a pretty big label. How did you meet those guys, and what's the relationship like?
So remember, I produced live events. And one of those live events was every year I'd throw this big party at South by Southwest. And there was a guy who would come to that party every year and invariably just stand in the middle, whether it was like the years when I did it inside or when we did it outside. He would stand in the best like part of the crowd where you could hear, the sound the best. And he would just stand there for hours. And I'd go and talk to him, and he was just like very kind of like charismatic figure with crazy hair. His name was Johnny Caps. And when I built my company, he was like one of the 24 people that I knew. And I hit him up, and I'm like, you need to pay attention to what's going on Musically. This is back in 2016. And, it took him a month to come around, and he was like, he calls me one day and he says, I've been reading these emails you get me. So, you've been sending me, sorry for delayed response. You have a meeting tomorrow at 300 with Kevin Lyles, dress nice. And I'm like, Google Kevin Lyles. Cause I come from Wall Street. Like I've been doing whatever I've been doing. I don't know everybody. Right. So I'm like, oh, okay, sick. I get it. Def Jam, found one of the early partners in Def Jam, Brand Warner Music Group, like big guy. So I get in there, pitch my idea. Kevin said some favorable stuff about me, sends me home. And then I get a call that night. You're meeting with Lior tomorrow. And I'm talking about Lior Cohen, who is the founder of 300 at the time, was still there. And that meeting the next day, say that again?
Founder of Def Jam as well, right?
Yeah, founder of Def Jam, and then president or whatever of Warner Music Group, and then spun off 2014 to start 300 with Kevin and a couple others. And that was June of 2016. Between June of 2016 and December 2016, I had 11 meetings with Lior, and they were awesome, energetic, and hilarious at the same time. And that culminated in us agreeing for me to become the agency of record with regards to influencers for 300 starting January 2017. And that was the game changer for me, because I was still trying to claw my way into this business as an outsider. I have no awareness about how this goes. All I know is like how Musical.ly works, but I really don't know the sensitivities and interests of my clients, because I don't know how labels work, really. But then all of a sudden, they gave me office space. They gave me a seat in their marketing meetings. And I'm like, holy shit. Now, with all this information that none of the people in this room have, I also understand what their sensitivities are and what makes them tick. And together, I was like, I just felt unstoppable. And of course, I didn't learn everything right away. It's taking me, years, and almost 4 years. And I still probably, there's people there who've forgotten more than I currently know. But I do understand with a lot of empathy what my clients want. And I'm able to skew my offering on my agency towards that, because in some way I am my own client, because Crowned is the label and I basically hire myself. Or I leverage those resources of my agency to help my own artists. So amongst other things, like that's been very, very helpful.
Incredible. Yeah. And so we kind of know the type of artists that you're interested in signing on Crowned and how you find them. Yeah. How like what are you looking for next in an artist on Crowned? Is it still the same concept, mining TikTok algorithms and sort of finding someone like who would be an ideal signee for Crowned?
So you have to be really good on social media for me, because I can use that, if nothing else. Let's say you have no music out, but you're like just a beast when it comes to building fans, engaging with fans on social media. Then we can use that as the lead tentpole and build structure around it. And we can make songs for that. And I don't mean like hokey internet songs, because the internet's full of, taste right now, to be honest with you. But we can make very tasteful songs to release to that audience. And we can craft and brand you in the right way, so that people believe that you're credible and believe that you're worthy of their attention. So that's definitely number one. Number two, there are certain types of music in this business that are expensive. Not only expensive to physically make, because producers and studios and writers and whatever, but expensive to market, and then expensive to carry, I'll call it, when the artist is getting to that in between point where they're like on the rise, but they're not exactly all that huge yet. And I've passed on a couple of those, and mainly that's pop music. And I've passed on a couple of those because I'm not there yet. I'm not ready to, open up Shawn Mendes type budgets for an artist of that type. And that's, incidentally, luckily served me well, because pop music honestly doesn't do as well on the internet as some of this like more niche kind of hip hoppy lo-fi stuff. And then you might think that I signed things that I like exclusively, where I like the music, but I don't, because while I have grown to like every artist I have signed to me and love their music and love them personally, I trust that they know. And there's been instances where I've been like, this song is going to be the best song that's not performing right now, like over time. And I was right. And then there's been instances where I'm like disagreeing with an artist and I'm like, this song's not going to be that great, but let's go with it because you think it is. And then sure enough, it blows up because they are, right. Because they know better. So as long as I can like not pretend to be the proprietor of taste for 16-year-old youth throughout, the United States and then beyond, I'll have success, I think, because that is it's quite difficult. You might imagine, 39 years old, living in the suburbs, spending a lot of time with my 5-year-old kid. I'm not like trying, I'm not out in the cut, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. Shout out to Westchester. I'm from Westchester. Yeah, so you think there's like some Gen Z Cardi B out there that you could really just pop through TikTok and
I
kind of
mean,
get,
yeah,
yeah.
Gen Z Cardi B. The first thing I thought about when you said that is this artist PP Cocaine. Like,
I know her. Yeah.
yeah, where did she come from? And and she did exactly what she's not signed to me, unfortunately, but she built her fans and audience in a very unique way on the internet, particularly TikTok and Instagram, and started putting out this outrageous music that like she knew everyone loved, that I certainly never would have thought of in a million years people would gravitate towards the way they did. And she's having a big run right now. So yeah, that person exists. The key for me will be finding it a little earlier. She went and got a major record label deal, very quickly. So
why do you
it's a
think
very competitive landscape.
Why do you think she's been successful, in particular, PP Cocaine?
TikTok. She's had like every song trend. She releases music first on TikTok. Like if she has a song that she's working on, she'll put it out on her TikTok page, which is now, followed by millions of people. And fans will make trends out of it. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. And then they'll release it and it'll already have baked in interest and success. So she's a beast. She like leverages that platform like crazy. And without it, I don't know if she would have been able to find the audience the way she's done, to be honest. It's not yet. I mean, it might have taken longer.
Yeah, totally. It's super interesting. Really cool. Yeah. So, at Roll, we're really starting to prepare for a world where, most digital creators may have their own digital money, completely unique to their brand, completely unique to their community. How do you personally think about artists having their own digital money? Do you think it could bring out sort of a new way for them to monetize?
All right. So you have been talking my ear off about this now for at least 2 years, maybe 3. And it was in its various forms and iterations back then. And it's been refined and refined and refined up until, a year ago. And now obviously you're on the forefront. And all the while, I have to admit, I leave every conversation with you confused. And then I go back and I listen to your Pomp interview and I read this and I read that you've written and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I gain a little bit more, but it feels like only scratching the surface. So I'm not able to answer this question with 100% confidence. And if I was, the opportunity probably wouldn't exist for you. Because if every Joe Schmo like me from the music business understood the opportunity, you'd be too late. And that's going to happen in probably 2 or 3 years. And you'll be obviously way ahead, too far ahead of everyone. And, it would have worked. But let's just put that out as a baseline. But to answer your question, based on what I can, glean from the various touch points, is that I believe that followers are to fan engagement today, right? Social media followers are to one creator's ability to engage fans, like artists, internet personalities, whatever, as holders of your currency are to engaging fans in the future. Oh, you didn't give me the response I was hoping for. I was hoping for like that. I was hoping for this. I was hoping I distilled it all down for everybody. But no, see, there you go. It's like, it's not totally it. It's not totally
No, I get it. Keep going.
But that's like the way I'm thinking. So it's like, okay, if I'm, I hope this fucking tangent works. But in 2016, I had a conversation with Jake Paul. And he already had a Vine audience, right? And then he was already big on Instagram by standards of that time. And I hit him up to do like some influencer deals, and he was building Team 10, and he wanted to talk to me. I guess he was taking any call under the sun. So I got on the phone with him, and what I never forget is he said, "I'm going to be the new Hollywood." He was like, "I'm going to reinvent Hollywood." So to the extent that, you know, movie stars are big, the biggest names in the world right now, I'm going to make it such that social media stars and people on YouTube are the biggest name. And at that point, he had a YouTube channel, he had Instagram, he had a Musical.ly page. If he had currency where he was like able to like tout and leverage the list of owners of it, he would be, honestly, dude, I don't even know where he would be. But after what he's going through right now with having, you know, the Nate Robinson fight and being offered the biggest deals under the sun to fight freaking, you know, McGregor and all these things, where he is like influencer number one right now, and he would have Barack Obama as an owner of his currency. He would have Oprah as an owner of his currency. He would have everybody under the sun as an owner of his currency. And that would be so much more valuable today than being like, oh, I'm followed by Kylie Jenner. No shade on Kylie Jenner, but like, okay, great. So she click the follow button on your page. And that's a big deal. Don't get me wrong. But imagine she owned your fucking money. She had it in her wallet. And then all of a sudden she's like rich because of you. Like, you just won the fucking the Nate Robinson fight and in front of everybody and became like on top of the biggest meme cycle of all time. And now these people are rooting for you in ways that like they couldn't otherwise, or they can't. And with that is gonna like come so much more maneuverability. And I can't help but think of like the upside maneuverability of it and how like amazing it's going to be. But when I went down one of my rabbit holes recently, I started to like get ahead of myself. And I started to think about the downside of like what happens when someone loses money holding your currency. And it got a little scared. But nonetheless, that is about as far as I can go answering that question, because I'm not sure what people are going to actually do with the money when they, you know, with the currency when they own it, especially when it starts to go up and down. Like right now, I'm only seeing things go up because they're new and that's great. But if there's actually a market for it, let's say Jake Paul lost to Nate Robinson, all of a sudden it's like, all right, coin went down. I don't know, like speculation, trading, I don't know.
Yeah,
you tell me. You tell me. I mean, I'm sure your audience here is having a difficult time with the question as well.
Yeah, I mean, generally, we're trying to like bridge a gap between the crypto native sort of experimentation that we're seeing into some of the more mainstream folks you're talking about. And it's going to be quite similar. We're looking at a bunch of the things that they do in the same way that you're sharing content. You know, you can share currency in the same way. So we're trying to think of the parallels that exist there. People are using currency as a form of membership. So you're closer to the nation, you're closer to the club, you have more social capital in the Kylie Jenner, Jake Paul community, because you can now sort of differentiate between other peoples. I own a few thousand Kylies, a few thousand Jakes, etc. So I think the future is actually going to look very similar to the present. There's just going to be new tools to do the same things, and it's going to make the outcomes different. Trending may mean something completely different when everyone has a market, right? So your content may not be trending. The actual value of your currency may be trending, which could have an astronomical effect on a lot of lives, versus just passively being a participant in watching a tweet or a piece of YouTube video go viral. So the future of this, which is interesting, is much more collaborative, right? So you're talking about the Jake Paul fight, right? And maybe him winning. the upside of that is experienced by like a lot of people in a really interesting new way through that concept. So yeah, I think your answer is fantastic.
All right, there you go. That's what I'm looking for. Maybe you're just waiting for me to finish.
um, and then just taking it back to artists in general, just really quickly, how do you think labels would get involved in a world where artists have their own money, their own digital money?
At the start, they won't. Labels at the start of streaming weren't involved. The contracts did not talk about streaming equivalents. And then all of a sudden people started to be like, oh, well, CD sales and digital downloads from iTunes are now being cannibalized by this marketplace created by these people from Sweden. So we better start putting that in the contract, right? They weren't like thinking about it yet. And there's going to be a period of time, again, when an artist is going to find opportunity and the label will be somewhat boxed out from it. But then it'll probably quicker this time around become part of become a negotiating position and standpoint. For instance, part of a standard, not necessarily standard, but part of a label contract is called ancillary, otherwise sometimes known as 360 rights. And that's when the label basically says, we're going to invest all these human resources and all this overhead, which costs a lot of money, plus actual cash for you to put in your pocket, plus actual cash to market you and move you around the world, in the country. And in exchange, not only are your songs going to consume, right? They're going to sell, but in this case, it's stream really. But you're going to get other opportunities. And it's going to be all as a result of this holistic movement. So therefore, we want to participate. And they don't participate in as high of a percentage as they may in the recorded music stuff that they, release for you. But they might participate in your, the growth of your currency or your currency, they might hold some of your currency. Thinking you had one or two steps, they might be required to own some of your currency to do the deal. The artist might say, all right, you're going to give me this much cash, but a lot of it, some of it's going to come in the form of a wire transfer, but some of it's going to become a form of you buying, some of my treasury coins, like coins that I've, held back for this type of opportunity. And then not only does the artist get the money that they would from the regular wire transfer, they would also have a very highly vested owner. An owner with a highly vested interest, or a partner with a highly vested interest than they would otherwise traditionally. And that could be a very interesting negotiating point, because I'd like to think that if you're an artist that signs to a partner that you believe in, that you like, that you would want them to have that. And if they're going to pay for it from you or buy it from you, then that's all the better.
Interesting. Okay. So you think in the beginning, similar to streaming, labels won't have a clue what's going on.
No.
They'll see something pop, then they'll want to get involved. And then you think they should be active participants or holders in their artist currency?
Again, my mind is thinking about the potential like negative downside to this, like blowing up or something. I don't know that they want to be a participant yet, because it's not a world they understand and they're not like building this for you. But fast forward however long that takes, and assuming it's all worked out and it's all well understood and there's safeguards against certain things, then they would totally want to help you build that. Like when an artist comes to a label and doesn't have a YouTube page, the label, without blinking an eye, sets them up with the YouTube page, and puts together a plan to help them build it. Not because they're going to make a whole ton of money off of the vlog video you just put out or the non-music related content piece you just put out, but because they understand that that builds fan engagement and that they're going to need it. So if this builds fan engagement, if this builds clout, if this builds status and wealth, maybe, then they're going to want to make sure that you have it buttoned up. And there's going to be obviously service providers for that, agencies and such.
Totally makes a ton of sense. And just looking towards the future, Max, you know, you've been right on a lot of things in the past, super early. I think a lot of folks would be interested in, you know, what's the future of Crown and Muser and you as a manager?
I'm going to have a hit song with a hit artist, and then I'm going to go have another one. And then we're going to sign bigger deals that are like, you know, de-risk them a little bit. And then I'm going to have no more than like 6 people working for me. Right now I have 3 full-time, and I'm going to have like probably 3 to 5 more, so 8 people. And by then I'll be in my mid-40s, and I will continue to be working this kind of like work from home type lifestyle as much as possible, because this is all I ever wanted, you know, minus all the negative socioeconomic that came with this quarantine. All I ever wanted was to just do a podcast with you on my webcam. And I'll be working from home, and you know, to some extent, and working for myself, most importantly, more so than most. I think I value that, the autonomy, the ability to innovate and own what you build and grow, and I want to hold on to that as long as possible, / forever, because it's been very enjoyable. Remember, I came from 10 years working for the man, so I understand what that's like. And that's, you know, a very abstract but true and real way to answer that question.
Incredible. What are you most excited about in the future?
I want to go to a show again next year. I want to go to a music festival. I want to go to a outdoor music festival and put my son on my shoulders and have him with the earmuffs. It's been a vision of mine before even having kids, and then here I am. Now I'm ready and nowhere to go. So
yeah, there's going to be some festival next year or the year after that's just going to represent like a big exhilarating moment where we're finally back. And
yeah. No, but that's also abstract. Intangibly, you know me, I've been vocal about a company called Stationhead. So they are so many steps ahead of everybody else when it comes to voice and streaming, really. Right now, it's like streaming has become, is no longer democratized because there are gatekeepers that allow you to get on these playlists and such. Spotify is a platform that's been around, 3 years or so, that allows you to host your own radio show and play music that counts as a stream times the number of people listening.
Wow.
It's now most recently become archivable. So let's say that you ran a podcast and had, one of my songs in there, and then it became like the most viral, biggest thing. Every time someone went to the archives and listened to that, I say podcast, it's not, that show, the radio show that you put together, it would count as a stream, because in order to be part of Stationhead, you have to connect with your streaming account, like Spotify Premium or Apple Music. And they're doing great, slowly grinding. Like I said, they are so many steps ahead of everybody else that they're almost too early. And it's just a matter of like, can they, keep that, can they stay in the game? It was long enough for the world to catch up to them. I mean, so far as the answer is definitely yes. But I think that is an opportunity, because I can see the playlisting game just gets so saturated and competitive and meaningless almost, because like, if you can't access it and you can't use it to help you, then what do you do? go out and you build your own. So you're going to have young artists, young tastemakers, young influencers build their shows, just like they're building podcasts, but they're going to build them in a live format on the platforms like that. So I think that's big. I think gaming is going to continue to be big. It's an opportunity that I'm just kind of learning more about now. Getting all my artists on Twitch, learning about like the financial investment that goes into that. Right, you can't just like stream from your phone. You have to like have equipment. And right now, I think there's an opportunity to take the plunge and buy that equipment, get in the game, and get ahead of everybody else still, and build, you know, your audience and your fans doing that, whether it's playing games or making music on, you know, on Twitch or YouTube Live or whatever, or YouTube gaming, stuff like that. So those are two things that, you know, I'm liking. And I get this question a lot. People say, oh, well, what's the next TikTok? Because I was early on that. And the answer is, I don't know. It doesn't have to be right away. So if TikTok gets shut down tomorrow, there doesn't need to be another thing to happen right away. And it will not look like TikTok. That I can promise you. Just like TikTok didn't look like Vine, and Vine didn't look like YouTube, and YouTube didn't look like Instagram, and Instagram didn't look like, you know, MySpace. So like, it'll be totally different. So for the guys out there trying to look for the next one, I would say pay attention to the stuff that's so like very not obvious to you. Because the people who are like, oh, this is a TikTok clone, probably not going to work.
Totally. And then lastly, Max, you know, where can folks find you online? Where can folks find your label, your agency, your public stuff on social?
Agency is Muser, MUUSER.com. Actually, I meant to wear my merch during this, so it was just, you know, would have been a marketing opportunity, but I spaced on that. MUUSER.com. Go to the blog, go back to 2016, read some of the early stuff. A lot of it is still the same today, to be quite honest. And then Crowned Records, CROWNED, records.com. And on socials, it's Most Definite Max, MOSTDEFINITE MAX. That comes from that first foray into social media and into this world from Wall Street. Was our blog. It was called The Most Definitely, which you can go to if you'd like, but it's still going to be the same as it was 4 years ago. We haven't touched it, updated it. It's like a relic right now, so it's going to be somewhat nostalgic. But Most Definite Max on Twitter and Instagram.
Incredible. Well, Max, thanks so much for stopping by Roll Radio.
Bradley, thanks, man. Talk soon.
Of course.